DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's episode of Tuesday Night with Ben Stowe. Tonight we're going to be talking about exciting and fun things. The problem is we really don't know what those are. But once we figure them out, tonight we're going to talk about actually, Ben, we've had questions on this one, and even in a first show time with Scott, questions came up about this. And we're going to be talking about life expectancy of gear, what to do with old gear, when is it time to look at new gear, and why is Star Wars not following the original universe? These are all questions we're going to answer on tonight's show.
Gear.
Star Wars. Yes, exactly. So
all right.
The important question, which I would like to get to first, we'll put that one at the end. So first off, life expectancy of gear. And this is something, Ben, that we've talked about on some past shows and such a little bit, is that gear doesn't last forever. And we need to be upgrading on a semi-regular basis because of maybe some, things just wear out and such. So let's start in one thing that we all know and love is talking about our sound systems. A speaker that is used on a regular basis, I mean, there's wear and tear and things happening to it as they're being jostled around. If you were going to make a recommendation for someone to have a point in time where it's starting to make that, maybe think about replacing and upgrading or just replacing because of wear and tear, where is that line? Is this a 2-year thing, 5-year thing? And what are some variables that would affect that?
Well, I'm glad you said variables because, of course, the answer is it depends.
Dang it! I was hoping to hold that off just a little bit longer. That's why I threw the variables in.
I could sense it. I could see it, and I could tell you.
I'm trying to keep you away from that. If I go variables, maybe he'll
say anything, but it depends. So I went right for the jugular.
And everyone in the chat room is now having a drink of Pepsi. There we go.
Bottoms up, everybody. There's a couple reasons we would replace gear. One is, of course, that it wears out. Maybe it's served its useful life, and we're replacing it because it's worn out. 2 would be obsolescence, that gear no longer is current. Now, speakers, they're going to have a longer lifespan as far as obsolescence goes. Media players and things tend to have a shorter lifespan.
That's what I was going to say. Give us an example of something that would be an obsolete piece so people can visualize that, what that would be.
Well, for example, you might have a perfectly good CD player, but you're probably not using it anymore, or maybe a better example would be a mini disc player or a cassette player. Functionally it might still work, but it would be rendered essentially obsolete. Lighting has gone that way too, where there are traditional lighting fixtures that generated a lot of heat, consumed a lot of power, and probably still work just fine, but they've also been replaced because LED is lighter, cooler, draws less power, all sorts of things like that. And then, the other one wouldn't even necessarily be a matter of obsolescence, but maybe functionality, that your show might change. Certainly none of us is getting any younger. So maybe gear is, getting to a point where Thought we were just about to have a visitor there. Anyway, yeah, I think they're stalking me around the corner.
Yeah, probably.
I just came back from a week on the road. So anyway, where maybe we want lighter gear, or maybe we've grown into bigger shows, and so we need bigger gear, and as I'm fond of saying, have the right rig for the gig. With loudspeakers in particular, I think by and large, notwithstanding those other things, they tend to have the longest lifespan, or certainly a very long lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what that lifespan is going to really depend on a couple things. One, the quality of the loudspeaker, and two, how you treat it. There are loudspeaker systems that we install in churches that will probably last 15 to 20 years. Loudspeaker systems we install in arenas that will comfortably go 10 or 15 years, maybe without even anything but minor maintenance.
Sure.
So now let's just put a pause on that, and let's talk about depreciation. So never mind the mechanical useful life of gear as far as that goes. Let's talk about taxable depreciation. And for a capital purchase on electronics, the IRS, I believe, is 5 years. So basically, and the reason for that is maybe you don't want to write it all off in 1 year because you're going to continue to gain income from that equipment over a series of many years. You want to be able to spread that write-off out over those years. Really just depends whether you Section 179 something or not, and that's a CPA question. But so let's say that basically your loudspeaker after 5 years in the eyes of the IRS is worthless. It's worth zero. It's depreciated to zero. So there's that. That doesn't mean you have to get rid of it after 5 years. If it's working great, continue to run it. And again, that brings us back to the questions of, is it still doing the job? Is it still working correctly? Have you taken care of it? So I would think for a DJ, notwithstanding the other needs to change systems, 7 to 10 years is really not out of the question.
Let's talk a little bit about a couple of things that we're going to stay in sound systems that would hasten the demise of a sound system. And you said, of course, it depended on how a person treats it. And that's obviously a huge issue. And that's what I want to kind of focus on, some of the things that we do knowingly and maybe unknowingly that would reduce the life of like a powered speaker.
Well, abuse in its simplest terms, and I'm sure you're going to ask me specifically what we mean, but
I'm going to throw some ideas of some abuse things that I have noticed.
I'll let you do it here.
One
is some abuse out there.
One abuse that again going in unknowingly is in Minnesota. We have extremes in temperature. We have hot, humid in the summer, and in winter we have 6 below. And we're hauling.
You may notice I'm wearing a sweatshirt today.
Yes, I've been wearing this for about a month now, and I've got a heater on the floor, and I'm still cold in here. But it's just the way it is here. But when we're moving this gear in and out and into some venues that have got humidity and we have this condensation and such, without knowing it, we are putting moisture into some of these amplifiers and speakers and such. And I hate to admit this, I had a speaker from about 5 years that's about 5 years old that was a non-powered. This was my last non-powered speaker. I actually popped it open the other day because I was doing something with it. I wanted to do a video, and I'm seeing on the magnet kind of a white, I would assume it was like a corrosion that had started to develop on it. And the only thing I could attribute it to that is that I was using it. It was in and out of some different things, and it was stored in an unair conditioned. It was on a shelf in an unair conditioned room, so it was getting some of that summer humidity. It was getting that temperature extreme in winter. And we talked about this in our cold weather show that we did 3 or 4 years ago. And don't forget, you've got that magnet which has a lot of mass and is going to store that cold, as it were. Which actually cold isn't a measurement; it's the absence of heat. But now we're just splitting hairs. But for all my nerd brethren out there, there you go. Yeah, make sure you get that in there.
Yeah, there is no unit of measure for cold. There's only a unit of measure for heat. So cold is just the absence of heat. Anyway, moving on. So when we take this magnet, which has mass, and we bring it into a environment like a venue, which has warm, moist air in it, that's going to condense on there. And you're going to have water on those components. Things big heat sinks or big transformers or magnets, anything that's got a substantial amount of mass is going to allow more water to condense on it. So it's going to stay cold longer. The other thing, of course, is that things contract when they're cold and expand when they're hot.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that physical stress, particularly on joints and junctures, and it can be very stressful on the physical properties of a product. And then if you couple that with rough handling, of course, things don't flex very well when they're cold. So if you have gear that's cold and you throw it around, it's less able to absorb that abuse.
And I think where this all fits in is kind of going to the question we had from the first show is they were asking about used gear and talking about trading in gear, and somebody also asked about buying used gear. And I think these are real concerns as someone who might want to go out and buy a used piece of gear, whether it's lights or speakers or anything. There could be a lot of things that have happened to it that you just can't see on the outside that could be a red flag or a huge problem down the road.
Yeah, there's some real unknowns there, and there's some pieces of gear that I just would never buy used, and I mean, there's just some things you say, man, I don't think so. I think I would never, trussing is one, for example, and you might say, well, that's silly. Trussing is just metal. No, listen, take a paper clip, flex it back and forth for a while, and after a while, it's going to break.
Mm-hmm.
Metal fails. When it's flexed, and trussing flexes by design. So, there's a lot of unknowns there. I think that's just one thing I wouldn't buy used. And, somebody else might be perfectly happy buying it used, and, more power to you. I'm just saying that's one thing for me. But a lot of things like that where I would say, boy, I don't know. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'd want to look it over fairly carefully and kind of have an understanding of if I knew who used it and how they used it, I would probably feel better about that.
Yeah, I think that's obviously a point out, knowing who had it and how they stored things, and things would get into it. Damp rid. I actually had some things that were packed up from 2 years ago. I had the CD players that were in the office here, and they were climate controlled completely. And I put them into a trailer, and I decided to basically put damp rid in the coffin with it, and thinking that that would keep it dry pulled those out, and corrosion on everything in that box. So CD player, the Newmark CDN 88 or whatever that worked wonderfully when I put it away. Maybe it was 3 years ago. It's just basically garbage. So it can do some stuff, but it didn't save that. And it was in a sealed rubber gasket SKB case, which at the time was the case to store things in. But Howie, Jimmy, pay attention. Is Jimmy not paying attention again? I wanted to kind of, so of course, obviously the handling and such of the gear, does looking at the length of life of gear, does the warranty and such, does it tell us anything about the potential life expectancy of gear, or is that just one of the things that has become to a point kind of more of a marketing thing that people feel better because they see a 6-year warranty than a 3-year warranty?
I think both. I don't think a product with a 6-year warranty is necessarily expected to have a better lifespan than a product with a 3-year warranty. I think at some point, there's diminishing returns. Generally, and we got to think about what a warranty is. In almost every case, a warranty covers manufacturing defect, which usually manifests itself right away. In other words, if that defect hasn't caused a failure within 2 years or 3 years, it's probably not going to within 6 years.
And precisely.
Because if the product simply wears out, that's not a warranty issue. If the product is abused, that's not a warranty issue. For example, if you buy a new car and you crash into a light pole, that's not covered under your warranty. That's covered by your insurance.
Yep.
But that's not a manufacturer's defect, unless there was a defect that caused it to crash into a light pole, but probably the defect was the driver, So I think that's one thing. But on the other hand, I think there is, if you see a product with a 30-day warranty and a product with a 3-year warranty, you sort of have an idea that the manufacturer expects one to outlive the other a little bit. And a shameless plug here. Now, when you take our Platinum Series cables, which have a forever warranty, well, yeah, that's a pretty bold statement. We're pretty much saying that cable is going to last you forever or else, So that, I think, is a pretty bold statement. And I don't know how you can compare an infinite number like forever to a finite number like 3 years. So, I guess that's just one of those things. But, from 2 years to 3 years to 5 years, all of those products are going to have a pretty substantial lifespan, I would think. At that point, the manufacturer is saying, hey, we built a product that's very good, and we guarantee it against any defect we made for 2, 3, or 5 years. And you could probably expect any of those products to last a good long while.
Now, if we move into looking more at lighting, we kind of were looking at sound and such. There's obviously some different concerns when it comes to the life expectancy and the usability of lighting. Kind of if people are kind of wondering, should they buy a less expensive light and replace them every couple of years, or from your experience, would maybe investing a little bit more to buy a little bit better quality mid-level light? I mean, what's kind of your recommendations on the success?
Bottoms up, everybody. It depends. There's diminishing returns where at some point, for a DJ to buy a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 touring class moving head probably doesn't pay dividends. It's not even a question of the quality of the light. Mm-hmm. At that point, certainly quality, but also a big emphasis on functionality. On the other hand, you can go the other direction with it, and you can buy ultra cheap, and you end up, I think, spending more in headache, and replacement or shipping cost. So I think there is a happy medium. When you take most DJ moving heads are between $500 and $1,500. Again, depending on functionality, output, that sort of thing. So if you say, well, I'm going to go get some moving heads for, $100, well, don't expect them to be on par, and mm-hmm. if you want to replace them frequently and you want to deal with heartache and headache and failure, that's certainly, you're right. If you are doing something, if you're a very busy performer and you're using these a lot, understand that, the more expensive fixtures probably will last longer. And certainly when you get into something as grueling as tour, and I realize most DJs don't tour, but some do almost have pseudo tours. There's a couple DJs that do very well around the country, and they're using touring class fixtures because they're in effect doing that, putting that load on those fixtures. In tour, you might have 5, 6, sometimes even 7 shows in a week, and it's in and out of the truck, and it's up and it's down, and it's, taking tremendous abuse going down the highway. So I don't know that there's a clear answer to that question. If somebody gave me 2 specific fixtures and said, should I get this light or should I get this light? And I would say, what are you doing with it? And they mm-hmm. say this. And I say, how often do you plan on using it? And they say, yes, we can start to put those variables together. But as far as a blanket answer, I think it depends.
You mentioned the touring. Let's kind of look at the touring companies, because they are dumping thousands of dollars per fixture into their lights. How long will a touring company that's out there doing 3 or 4 shows a week, how long, or what do they do? Are they changing their light shows out every year, every 2 years, or what? How does that work?
Well, usually it's based on the tour. So depending on how long the tour is, there's a lighting design for that tour, and many times those fixtures are rented, and then those companies tend to dump those fixtures. Basically, when they feel like the useful life of that fixture is over, they turn around and sell it at a nice discount, and somebody might get some light duty use out of it after a while, or, pick up some surplus tour inventory, that sort of thing. There's an old joke in our industry that the reason they call them moving lights is because they move from the truss to the repair bench. That's just part of the deal. Mm-hmm. Which really humors me, by the way, when a DJ has a light that's 1.5 years old and it breaks down and they just completely lose their mind. Like this horrible injustice has been perpetrated upon them. And I'm thinking about all the lighting techs I know whose only job on a tour is to constantly fix fixtures that cost 10 times what that DJ fixture did.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody likes stuff that breaks, but that is kind of part of the deal. And of course, the DJ manufacturers have worked really hard to try to make an inexpensive fixture that won't break as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Because DJs aren't traveling with lighting techs, and those manufacturers know that they're going to deal with the repercussions of that failure. So, yeah, I don't know if there's a magic number. I think it depends on the hours on a fixture, and how many they have, and whether or not they can repurpose them to another tour. And at some point, it's kind of like a car with a lot of miles. It's going to be on the bench more than a new one. At some point, it's just not worth fixing anymore. So then they just they get rid of it and make it somebody else's problem. So.
Adrian's got a great question. How do the old fixtures and old gear, how is that recycled? And I've often wondered that too, because as I've got lots of lights, old par cans, and it's like, well, how do you deal with that?
That is a great question, and an environmental one, if nothing else. Many of the things that we use have toxic materials in them, things that we want to dispose of carefully, maybe mercury, that sort of thing, rare earths and whatnot. But they also might have many recyclable things, aluminum, gold in circuit boards, that sort of thing. There's opportunities to, maybe recycle some of these fixtures rather than just throwing them in a landfill. And that depends on your personal dedication to it, and of course your resources locally. But I know there's a radio shop, a friend of mine's radio shop, that they have people sitting in the back all day just stripping apart broken stuff and, making piles. This is steel, this is aluminum, these radio chassis and things. And I mean like two-way radios, like like communication radios, the law enforcement, that sort of thing. They're chopping these things up into pretty small parts to get them into the appropriate recyclings, copper and aluminum and steel and whatnot. Others harvest gold out of circuit boards and things like that. So
I think, and now that I'm thinking about it, there's a couple of spots, I believe in St. Cloud, about an hour from me, where they will do such things, where they'll recycle microwaves and things. They charge a few bucks to take, but that way it's taken apart safely and doesn't end up in a landfill. So,
loudspeakers are a good example too, where they can be reconed. And I'm certain, I do. Stand by. Mm-hmm. Be right back. Let's see.
Wait a second. Let me come up with a commercial while you're gone. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking for new gear for 2019, go no farther than NLFX Pro. That's right. Go out to NLFXPro.com. There you'll be able to find all the cool things that you have to have for 2019. Looking for a great deal? Contact Katie on Facebook. Just search for Katie, and she'll get you set up with some killer deals for new gear for next year.
I think you have a future there, John.
Hey, that worked out pretty well. Sweet.
I think broadcasting might be for you. So here's a cone from a loudspeaker. And yes, I do just keep it around here. Anybody surprised? No, I don't think so. All right. So there's basically the non-metal parts of a loudspeaker. Right back where it was. Whereas here's a loudspeaker with the whole assembly. And this one, as you can see, it is shot. It has seen better days. Yes. And of course, I keep it around for the same reasons. But if we look at this one here happens to have an aluminum frame. And then we've got a magnet. We can see there's some, ferrous material there because it's rusting, which of course we knew it would be, right? But anyway, this could be recycled, or many of these can be reconed, which is simply the process of removing that cone and putting a new one in. Mm-hmm. And maybe not something you want to do, maybe not something you're up to doing or care to, but there are people who, even if they only give you a few bucks for the basket, they're not going to give you a ton of money for it. I don't know what the going rate is for a blown out basket, but they might be willing to buy those, and then they'll recone them, and then they'll sell them as recones.
Sure.
So, there's another way you could recycle these. And some people who are looking for a less expensive option at replacement driver will buy recones with varying degrees of success. I know a guy who just bought a bunch of recones, and they all basically toast, because the guy that reconed them wasn't very good.
Sure.
But some are very good. So, it's sort of a mixed bag. But anyway, for you, it's a matter of getting rid of that, what was to you junk is now worth a few bucks, and it's, effectively been recycled.
I want to bridge over now to microphones. We just had, this whole wireless microphone frequency thing, which obviously made a lot of microphones kind of obsolete. But taking that away, let's say the frequency thing didn't change. Does a microphone's capability deteriorate over time? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes. A definitive answer.
Yeah, it is absolutely a definitive answer. And of course I could make it, and it depends, but it depends on the use. But, things can drift in their tunings in the wireless world. The mechanical parts of actual microphones can begin to degrade and fail. And it doesn't happen quickly. But here again, I'm encountering people with this frequency, the mandate to change frequencies. And I just had a guy the other day. I said, "Wow, I really love these microphones. I've had them 15 years." I'm like, "Okay, I get that, but 15 years. It's time to move on."
Right.
They have more than made you their money at that point. On the other hand, I don't like getting rid of gear. I don't like being forced to get rid of gear. I had to get rid of a number of microphones, and I didn't like it. I have many football teams that are being forced to get rid of coaching intercom systems. Some of them cost $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 when they were new. And they're only maybe 8 or 9 years old. So, nobody likes being forced to replace gear. At the same point, though, remember, IRS depreciation 5 years. So if you got 15, you did good.
Oh, for sure.
You got 3 times more life out of that than the IRS, thought you would. So, or at least depreciated it. I'm not a tax accountant, so I'm not any kind of an accountant.
Just looking at a couple of questions here. Let's jump on this one. He's looking for a multi-purpose mic for his school used for talks, instruments, and vocals. What would be something that you would recommend for something that could be kind of that universal microphone for vocal, someone to be able to speak, someone to sing, and to be able to pick up instruments?
You had me at talking and speaking and vocals, and you lost me at instruments.
That's what I was kind of thinking too.
I've seen it done. I mean, I've seen all kinds of things done with varying degrees of success, I suppose. Good standard vocal mics, there's all kinds of great ones out there. Sennheiser 835, EV-ND76, AT510. I would not put the SM58 as a great vocal mic, even though it's probably the most widely used.
Yep.
In terms of output and clarity and that sort of thing. It's not right up there, but it is a very, very well used microphone and still probably the best selling mic in America. So you really can't go wrong with that. Everybody knows what they've got when they see an SM58. I would lean strongly towards like the Beta 58. I think that's a much better mic than the SM58. But all those mics that we just mentioned are, in that sub $100 range, except the Beta 58. Now, instruments, boy, that's a pretty broad category. Mm-hmm. You got everything from triangles, and glockenspiels to loud instruments like drums, perhaps. So I'm going to say, I don't know. I suppose you could take any one of those mics and point it at an instrument and probably get sound. Just the sound guy in me, which is pretty much all of me, isn't just going to get along with saying that's okay. Yeah,
of course. So when you have a glockenspiel, you want to make sure you're miking that to the utmost perfection.
Or the triangle.
But again,
if you have an epic triangle solo, you do not want to botch that.
Those come around so infrequently that when you have one, you've got to hit it.
We should have more. I think everybody should drink for a triangle solo.
Triangle solo.
I love that my show is now a drinking game. That's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Of all the things we've been proud of ourselves, we made a drinking game. Great.
Ben makes me drink.
Oh, that's just something. So yes, the Sennheiser E835 is what Ben was just talking about.
Yep, love that mic. Great mic. There's a 3-pack special on them. Of course, we always have a special on them. Just got to message me, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's a great mic, and the amount of gain you get out of that mic is really incredible.
Nice.
In terms of how much of your preamp you need to use, you'll be surprised at how much less you're using on that mic. So that and the ND76, both, really stunningly good mics, sort of kind of overlooked, I think, sometimes.
Okay.
Good. I suppose we got to throw some love to the ND76. EV's a sponsor of the Disc Jockey News, right?
They are.
And I'll tell you what, truth be told, setting the sponsor thing aside, I don't love any mic company as a wholesale. I don't like say, oh, I only use this brand of mics. Mm-hmm. No. Everybody's got some pretty awesome mics, and everybody's got some dogs. You know, I have a huge collection of Sennheiser mics. I have a huge collection of Shure mics. I have, you know, a huge collection. Well, maybe I have a lot of AT mics. I've got hundreds of microphones for different purposes. You know, some are absolute standards, like, you know, the SM58 or the RE320 or it's RE200. You know, those who saw Bohemian Rhapsody saw the RE20 in there. You know, John, you and I are both using RE320s, which are broadcast standards. Virtually every radio station in the world has something, you know, along from the RE family.
Yep.
Anyway, so there are some real standards, but then there's, you know, others that are a bit more obscure or whatever. And I just want to throw this plug in for the EV-ND series mics. They are stunningly good. I don't get to use them very much because they're fairly new and they're not really well known in the tour world and riders. But I'll tell you what, I can't say the name of the band because they have an endorsement deal with another major mic company. But when I was out on tour with them, we got a box of these new EV mics that had just been released. And the idea was just sort of see what you think, you know, put them through their paces. And so me and the production manager and the drummer conspired to use some of these, like the ND44 and the ND46 on some drums. And truth be told, we actually ended up running the rest of the tour with the EV mics, even though the band is endorsers for a different brand, because they said, wow, these sound really good. Do. So, you know, there's kind of an overlooked series, and there's a plug for, you know, your sponsor.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they definitely. And that's, as you say, they're a fairly new microphone out there. So they're just not into riders of bands, and they're not into those.
No, and people are creatures, you know, of comfort, really.
Yes.
I mean, by and large, they're not eager to make changes. You know, I mean, some people, and it depends on the style of music too. You know, what do you use on toms? Well, 604, 904, or Beta 98 AD, or, you know, 421, or, and what you use, you're probably going to continue to use. You're not going to, unless you're not happy, you're not going to go looking for a new mic.
Okay. Last area I want to talk about, and you kind of brought it up a little bit earlier in talking about our warranty and such, but cables, life expectancy of cables. As we know, anything can fail. And I'm talking not only cables, but let's also talk about some of the extension cords that we use within our shows. When should we be looking at, just because of the use and abuse and such that the cables have to go through, and we want to basically not have failure at our event? When would be a time to say, yeah, it's, you know, probably time to replace them?
Well, first and foremost, let's talk about warranties. Some cable companies have what I think is the lamest warranty out there. They have lifetime warranties, but when the cable dies, you don't have a warranty because its lifetime is up. Yeah.
So
okay,
it's
the lifetime of the cable, and when it decides to die, it has no warranty because the lifetime's up. I think that's I'm not a fan.
Yeah, it's not a genuine way to do that.
I don't think so. I think it's a cop-out, personally, and that's why we changed our cables. We used to call it a lifetime warranty too, and we realized our definition of lifetime was different than everybody else's, and I shouldn't say everybody. You know, I haven't researched every warranty, but different than some of these other ones. And so ours is a forever warranty. That's pretty simple, self-explanatory. Forever is forever. Okay. So when should you replace a cable? Well, I think, you know, for example, one, it's always good to have spares. Even if you have the most amazing warranty in the world, like ours, which is a forever warranty, you should have spares because failure can occur. You know, somebody could roll over your cable with a giant pizza cutter and cut it in half. I don't know, but something could happen. By the way, we did roll over one of our cables with an entire parade, and we are currently conspiring with the U.S. Army to drive some tracked vehicles over one. So stay tuned for that. But nonetheless, you know, you should have some spares. They can also get stolen and stuff like that. If you see that a cable is worn, you know, is maybe beginning to have some intermittent problems or beginning to show some you know, wear and some, you know, things like that. If it has a warranty, I would exercise that warranty. You know, put one of your spares into circulation and get that cable in the process of being repaired or replaced. If it's a cheap cable, and I see this, man, I'll tell you what, I see this on some of the church forums. It's like a daily drumbeat. I bought cheap cables on Amazon, and 3 months later, they're all dead. What should I do? Well, stop buying those. That's what I would do. Yep. You know what? Don't put yourself through the aggravation. You know, that's my 2 cents. those tend to fail a lot faster, and you'll kind of have the obvious signs. It's time to replace them. Intermittent connection, poor quality sound, connectors falling apart. Certainly any extension cord, now we're switching gears from mic cables to extension cord. Any of those that shows any physical damage should be taken out of service immediately. Any nick in the insulation or a cut or anything like that, because you're potentially exposed to life-threatening voltages here. They should be repaired when safely possible. That doesn't mean put electrical tape around it.
It's not a repair.
But if it has a serviceable end that you can replace with a UL listed end or something, well, okay then, but they should be immediately taken out of service. And another thing, I'll tell you what, when we have cords that go bad that are unrepairable, we chop them up into chunks and put them in the recycling bin so that nobody will be tempted to take this cord, which is now potentially dangerous, home and put it into service and, zap themselves.
Yeah, unknowingly using it for something that could cause trouble. Let's see. We had a question here from David, and we've talked about this one in the past. But David is wondering if there is any concern of noise coming through the XLR power lead cable, where the two of them are put together for a sound system. And we've talked about this before, but go ahead and.
Not in ours. Here again, your mileage may vary. I believe in a thing called love. Talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, hey, wait, I'm good at this. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, 2019 is just around the corner, and you want to get yourself that new sound system you've wanted to. Well, this is the time. Right now, EV's running a special promotion, $100 off your EKX speaker or $50 off your ZLX speaker. That's right. You can save money on your Electro Voice speakers between now and turn that off, please. I'm not done yet. You can save money between now and December 31st on your purchase. All you have to do is contact Ben or Katie at NLFX Pro, and they'll get you hooked up and save money on this new EV speakers for your 2019 jobs. Okay, now you're back.
Ask us for the John Young special. We'll do something. We'll do something extra special for you. So we talked about this in the noise show we did a few weeks ago or so, I suppose. But this is this was a prototype early run here. But anyway, what you can see is that the power cable is twisted. And then also inside the jacketing and shielding of the signal conductor is also twisted. And that was designed to prevent the transfer of noise, to try to avoid any of that electromagnetic coupling that could occur. So I can't give you a blanket answer for all combo cables. I can tell you that we have had no problems with noise on ours.
Excellent.
If you had a problem with noise on ours, you would be the first. And believe me, we would take it seriously, but we would want to know a lot more about what else was going on so that we could possibly refine the engineering of the cable. As of now, no problems and a lot of happy people.
Excellent.
That's what we said.
Excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap things up with that because Ben is home for the first time in a little while, and he needs to go spend some time with the family tonight. Ben, thanks for your information and knowledge tonight. Some good information for those who've been kind of wondering about maybe doing some upgrading of their gear. And I've been told that there's a great deal on EV speakers, so they need to check that out too.
Well, there is, and I'll tell you what, I sort of feel like I want to apologize to our viewers because I certainly don't want the show to be an infomercial, and there's several times when things like cables and that sort of thing where I can't help but talk about the things that we've designed because, doggone it, we make a great product, and I really do believe in it. So, I apologize if it comes across like an infomercial, but I feel like I wouldn't be doing a service if I didn't tell you how I really felt about those things because I think they're really fantastic. That being said, when it comes to replacing gear, if the time is right to replace gear now, and by the way, this is not meant to be, a scare tactic or something, but every day I get 3 or 4 more emails from manufacturers saying tariff increases are coming.
Yep.
And they could get worse in January. Some of the 10% tariffs could become 25% tariffs. The tariffs seem to be pretty broadly supported by both Democrats and Republicans. So I don't think this is going to go away. Everybody knows that some of the trade things need to be addressed, and it's painful for all of us. But bottom line is, I don't think it's going to go away. The tariffs are not just going to stop here. anytime soon, probably. And so the point is that everything is going to cost more in 2019. I really think so. And the Fed is looking at raising rates. So money is going to get more expensive. The gear is going to get more expensive. And as we talked about earlier, there's that IRS depreciation, or even Section 179, which is 100% deduction in a given tax year. So this might be the time to get some gear. And if it is, we'd love to help you with that. We've got some awesome programs. We've got some financing options with no payments until 2019 and payments up to 60 months. We're trying to do our part, small as it is, to combat the large global economic forces like tariffs and rising interest rates and changes of taxes. So there. Now that I just got done apologizing for making the show an infomercial, I decided I'd just go all out and make it an infomercial.
Well, we're doing that, not intentionally by any means, but we're having some fun with it tonight. So thank you guys for being with us tonight. We'll be back in about 20 minutes with Brian tonight. Brian and I will be chatting about sharing the microphone and some tips and such of using that microphone with people in the crowd and how you should do that to a level of success. So Ben, thanks for being on tonight.
My pleasure.
Bye-bye.